Hello, and welcome to Redeeming the Time podcast with your host, Eric Escamilla.
All right, everybody. This is Eric Escamilla with Redeeming the Time. We're on our second interview with Shaun Cryts, and thank you, Shaun, for coming back to share the second part of your story. Um, Today is New Year's Eve, so Happy New Year, 2026 coming in, and Huskers are in Vegas at a bowl game, so go Big Red, right?
Go Big Red. Let's go all the way.
Right on. Um, When we did our first interview, Shaun, you talked about 6 years old and started smoking, and uh, things kind of escalated, it sounded like, as you got older and dabbled into more things. So just do a small recap, uh, of kind of the first video so
Okay.
people are kind of caught up, and then we'll move right into your next next story.
All right. Well, first of all, Happy New Year's, everyone. I hope everyone had a pretty good Christmas, and I hope everyone has a great New Year's. Um, so, back to the first part of my story. Like I said, at age 6, I started smoking. I was living with my grandma because I got taken away from my real family at the age of 3 months old. So I ended up living with my grandparents in Lebanon, Tennessee. Um, I had a decent couple years as a child, but I'm gonna say when I turned 6 years old, I discovered cigarettes. My grandmother, like I said before, my grandmother kept her cigarettes in her coat pocket out in the garage, along with her book of matches. Um, you know, I I wanted to go out and try one, so I snuck out in the garage around 5:30 in the morning when I got up. Smoked my first cigarette at the age of 6. I got caught because I left the garage door open, and like I said, my grandmother smelled smoke coming from the garage. Um, so she came out there and she caught me red-handed. Um, and that's when everything started going downhill for me because I kept acting out. I kept doing things just to, like I said, try to fit in with people because I thought it was cool at the time. I thought smoking was cool. Um, so I continued to do that for a lot of years.
What
Then
point did you feel that there was the what was the escalation? Like, what, 10 years old, 12 years old, and then you dabbled into what at that point?
so it escalated from the age of 6 up to the age of 10. I started, sneaking uh, alcohol from my grandparents. Because I seen them doing it, and like I said, I thought everything was cool. I thought that's how life was. Um, so I dibbled and dabbled in alcohol and in drugs. Um, Throughout my entire childhood, my teen years, all the way up into my adulthood.
And the choice, was it a, how do I ask? Was it a choice of drugs, or was it because of that age um that you the curiosity led you to, was it marijuana, was it alcohol? I mean, what was it, kind
Um,
of the choice of drug, I guess?
so it was the curiosity for starters. I was curious about like how it made you feel, what it did to you, and then after the curiosity fell off, I ended up liking it because I liked what it did to me. I liked how it made me feel. I like how it made me forget uh, things that happened to me as a young child. Um, the drugs and the alcohol covered up like I said before, a lot of the pain, the anxiety that I was dealing with, the traumatic events that I had in my life, um, and from there it really progressed. Uh, you know, I dibbled and dabbled in. The first drug I did was marijuana. I did that at the age, I can't remember. I think it was like 10 and a half, 11. Um, with my step cousin, because like he was doing it and I wanted to fit in with him, because like in my childhood during school, I was an outcast. I was a loner. I didn't really fit in with anybody. I didn't really have friends. So I did things like other people did so I could fit in with them, so I could have friendships and have those connections. Um,
Isn't that interesting? That yeah, the chickens are talking to us.
I see that.
Isn't that interesting though that sometimes, not all the time, but it's always someone older.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense, right? Where
Yeah.
would you get it at 10 and a half? Know how much to pay, right? But it just seems like a lot of the stories that I hear, there's always um, somebody that's a little bit older that we look up to,
Yeah.
or we think it's cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of sounds like that's what you, uh, similar story, right?
Yep.
I think I was 15. My cousin was a little bit older, 14. I was 14. He was a little older.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly where I was at.
Yeah.
Kind of what it was like, what the feeling was, and it was cool. I thought it was cool, right? And he was older, so it was acceptance.
Yeah.
And so, if so, from the marijuana, you kind of jumped up, and we'll do this preview kind of quick. You jump up to your 20s, and what's going on?
Yeah. So from 10 to 20 to maybe 23, I dibbled and dabbled in cocaine. I did that because my other older cousin, which was older than I was, he was doing it, so I wanted to fit in with him, so I tried it, and that helped me to fit in with other people, because everybody else was doing it, so I had to do it. I had to try it, and then it progressed into, like I said before, crank, which is what they call methamphetamine now. Um, and all the drugs and the drinking and the cigarettes, all that led up to the behaviors that I was doing, the patterns that I was following from my older cousins, other kids in school, um, and the patterns and the behaviors just gotten worse over the period of time that I was doing it. Um, and I got hooked on it. I got hooked on the stuff at a very young age, uh, and it's took me a long time to get out of that. I'll never forget what it did to me the very first time I did it. Um, and like I said, I never want to go back to that day. Um, and I kept chasing that high for so long that uh, I was never able to get that very first high that I got, from the crank or the cocaine or the marijuana or the alcohol.
Did it? What I think about is some of these drugs tend to give people an artificial confidence.
Yes.
And that is where the addict tends to think that they're escalating into a better life, but they're just going deeper
Yeah.
into the drug, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the lack of, I'm not saying that the lack of your situation, but the lack of confidence, the insecurity, you looked up to somebody, right? You wanted to
Mm-hmm.
be cool, and then that artificial high,
Yeah.
right? You kind of just say, "Oh, I'm cool now," or "I can." You say more, talk more, you act more. These types of things.
Yes.
And so, I just kind of wanted to mention that because that's so true.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not really you, you know.
Right. Um, you're right. You're right. Because like when I was like I'm gonna go back a little bit. Like when I was growing up, like I didn't have confidence. I didn't have the know-how to stand up and do things on my own. Um, like nobody really taught me how to do anything when I was growing up. You know, the drugs and the alcohol, they were always right in front of my face. Um, so not having the confidence to stand up and be the authentic me like I am today, um, you know, I didn't have the control not to do what other people were doing. I had the lack of know-how, um, for a better sense of words. Um, you know, I didn't have the proper upbringing like other kids do these days. Um, you know, like I said before, I was in and out of foster care for a while as well, growing up. So like, I didn't feel like I had what's the word? A sense of
Structure,
purpose.
the structure of
The structure of a proper living home. Um, and it sucks because like I wanted to be like other kids. I wanted to have friends. I wanted to have family that loved me for me. Um, and I didn't have that growing up. Uh, you know, I was always put on the back burner around holidays. You know, I didn't even know what a holiday was when I was a kid, or a birthday, or family get-togethers, or anything like that. So I did things out of context to fit in, um, and that led me into to getting in trouble when I was growing up. You know, like I said, I always acted out on bad behaviors. Um, I acted up in school just so I could get the attention that I thought I deserved or I thought I needed at the time. Um,
That's weird. That not weird, but that's interesting that you say that, because the environment you were brought up in, you're not to blame, but it's a situation where you're acting out was your way of thinking that was going to get you your attention,
right,
but not the right attention, more of the negative attention.
exactly. And with that being said, like, um, up into my early 20s, like I still acted out because like I always wanted that self gratification, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Um, to be accepted and to be wanted and to be loved. So I did things out of context to in thinking that that's what I was going to get in return.
Mm,
Um, and in all reality, I didn't because I was not only hurting myself, I was hurting other people around me.
mm,
I was hurting the environment that I was in because like I was doing drugs out in public. I was drinking and driving, and you know I could have killed somebody while I was drinking and driving,
mm-hmm.
um, or I could have killed myself. Um,
Kind of had that just didn't give a shit kind of a attitude.
exactly, and that's what it boiled down to. Like I didn't give a shit about anybody. I didn't give a crap about if you know if I was going to live or die. I didn't care about anything but myself. Um, and that's what the drugs and alcohol did to me for a lot of years. Um, you know, going back to like when I was 23, when you know when I went back home to see my real family, like I said before, which was a big mistake, because not shortly after that, I got put in prison. Um, you know, and I thought when I got put in prison that I could stay away from the drugs, like I said before, um, and I couldn't because they were there. And then when I got out of prison, I went right back to it because that's like I said, that's all I knew to do. That's what I did to cover up the shame, the guilt, uh, the loneliness. You know, I did things that would make me feel better for the time.
And going home to family, was that something that you felt that if you did that, was that maybe things were going to get better?
Yes.
Maybe that history wasn't going to be there. and you were just kind of
Right.
what was that thought of going back to family and home?
In my mind and in my thinking, I thought when I went back home to be with my real family that things would be better, that things were going to be better, and that they were going to show me love and compassion and kindness, um, and that they wanted me there. Um, and it wasn't that. It wasn't that case. It was totally different. Like I said before, they they didn't want to have nothing to do with me. My mom tried to kill me with axes, tried to throw axes at me. My dad tried to run me over with his truck a few times, and that scared me because like
You were in your 20s?
that was like when I was yeah, that was when I was like 20 something. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, I didn't bring that up in my last story, but that's kind of what happened when I got home. And, it's something that I don't like to talk about, but I know I should talk about it to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's a good way to start the healing. Go ahead.
and so after that, I kind of decided to leave for a little while. So I went back, and when I went back, I came back from a party, and my mother ended up putting me back in prison. Um, and then when I got out of prison, like I thought things were different, and they weren't. So I went back to doing things that I knew to do to cover up the hurt, the shame, the guilt, the loneliness. And so I went back to drinking, drugging, back to my old ways and my old behaviors. Um,
What I find interesting is that in this excuse me, in this process, you still knew somewhere inside, and this is to parents. These are to people who are going through something like this, and we have kids that through all this that you're going through, you still had a sense of knowing what love was, wanting to be loved, wanting to be part. You had this authenticity, this genuine something inside of you that was wanting that and looking for that.
right,
And at that moment in those times, you it wasn't there.
right,
That's tough. I think, like I said, we all go through something like that, you know.
yeah. And it's a good point that you brought that up because that's one thing that I was always looking for as a younger kid to my young adult life. Um, and like I said before, I thought I had found it in the drugs and alcohol because it gave me a sense of belonging at that time. Because it made me forget about all that stuff that happened through my childhood. Um, but it wasn't actually what I needed in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I really needed somebody that actually loved me for who I was, and I never found that up until I got in my 30s, or I
30
thought I
years
found it.
old before you felt love. Isn't that? Oh, that's, dude, that's tough. Because,
Yeah,
like I said, you're not the only one. But my point is that that's tough, man. You
yeah,
know what? We should have that embrace as a baby all throughout life, right?
right.
And to not have that, yeah. Sometimes we wonder, okay, that's why I did this. That's
Hmm.
why, I've also heard that when I hear people talk, they talk about heroin, and they say that when they smoke heroin, it's like the warmest embrace
Yeah,
you could ever feel.
yeah.
And so that's the choice that we ended up having that's what we want,
Hmm.
that connection. But we end up taking a drug, right?
Right.
Alcohol, eating, social media. I mean, the list goes on that.
Yeah. So like I said, I thought I found what I wanted in the drugs and alcohol, because like you said, it does give you that warm, fuzzy sensation of what you thought you wanted. Because like the drug does something to you, it grabs a hold of you and holds you tight
Mm.
for quite a while. And that's what it did to me. Um, and then when I got into my 30s, I thought I found the love of my life. We had three beautiful children together. And then my first son, like I said before, my first son passed away at the age of 5.5 years old. And after he passed away, like, I went downhill tremendously.
Do you care to share how that happened?
Yeah, so my son passed away. They called it SIDS, which is sudden infant death syndrome or something like that. They said he just went to sleep and never woke up. Um, and the thing is he died. My son passed away in my arms, and I didn't even know it.
Sorry.
I was feeding him. I was rocking him, and he went to sleep. And that's what hurt me the most, because like I thought that I might have done something to my child. Um, and I had to get up and go to work that morning, so I laid him in the middle of the bed next to mom. And I got up and I went to work. Um, and that stuck with me for a very, very long time.
Forever.
So
Loss.
after he passed away, and after I got the phone call from my wife at the time, I was at work, and I told my boss at the time that I had to leave, that I had to go to the hospital because my son has passed away. And at that time, my boss would not let me leave the job. So I told my boss that, you can take this job and shove it up your rear end. I'm leaving. Um, and my boss at the time had the audacity to follow me from the job all the way to the hospital, uh, just to make sure that that's where I was actually going. Um, and by the time I got there, I went in and I broke down. I did not want to leave my son's side for anything. Like, that was my pride and joy. He was my firstborn. Um, that was my pride. And then we had to leave the hospital for a little while because they had to run some tests or whatever, do whatever they had to do. So my boss met me outside with a box with a outfit for my son to wear for his funeral, at his funeral. And, I cussed my boss out. I told her to take it and go somewhere else. Like, I don't want nothing from you. And then, like I said, that's when I hit the bottle really hard. I hit the bottle and I did not stop. Um, and that went on for as long as I can remember. Then I found, like I said, crank, which they call methamphetamine today. And I loved that stuff. Like, I loved what it did to me. It made me forget everything. Um, it made me feel like I was on top of the world. I was untouchable. Um, and like, I did whatever I had to do to go and get that. Um, and then not shortly after that, we had our second daughter, which is Neva. She's my other pride and joy. She's 16 now. Um, she's never really seen me in my active addiction, which I thank God for that. Um, then we had another son named Gerard. He was only a baby when me and my first wife split up. He's never seen me in my active addiction either. Um, they both live in Tennessee with their grandmother. um,
Do you get to communicate with them?
I communicate with my daughter. Yeah, my son not so much because he really doesn't remember me. But I talk to my daughter every now and again when I'm able to.
Nice.
Which is great. I love talking with her, and she knows that, she knows that Dad's doing okay, that I'm doing better than I was. Um,
And that's important that for her,
yes,
because anything that you know as well that you lacked, you're able to do the best you can to let her know, you're
yeah.
sober, you love her, all those things, and that's so important for her.
um, let's see.
You kind of so then the methamphetamine kind of and the alcohol took over after the passing of your son.
Yes,
Kids are grown. You have a little communication with them, which is awesome.
yes,
And yeah, I bet your boy would like to hear you. Just as a dad of
yeah,
5 boys, uh, and as a parent, sometimes I think, man, what would I do if I lost one of my kids, right? So I'm proud of you that you're at this point, man, because that's tough.
yeah.
That's tough. And you've been sober how long?
I just celebrated 16 months on the 26th of December, which is another fantastic milestone because I think the last time we did the podcast, I was right at 13 months. And now I'm 16 months. And it's, like I said, it's been very rough. It's not been very easy. But I've maintained and I've made it through. Um, and these, like I said, these 16 months have been mm, probably the most best times of my life. And it's only going to get better from here.
It's almost kind of a new life per se, because the experiences that we go through being sober aren't necessarily so brand new, but you have a freedom of choice to
Yes,
make it a better choice than to go to drugs or alcohol or
right.
whatever, right? And so that's the I don't know, fun feeling, but that's just a freedom. It's like, wow, I've never been here before. I can make it better, make it right. I can make the right decision,
Exactly.
and that helps. That helps as you continue on in your sobriety. My 5.5 years of being sober, um, I, I'm pretty much at a point where I have no, I really don't have any triggers,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have any urge for anything like that, because I am growing into the experience of that freedom of doing something right and knowing that everybody goes through something, and I can make the right choice to not go back but go forward and see what the future has, which is always, making the right decisions is always the better decision.
Exactly. Um, so today I have a freedom of life. Today I have a brand new life to live. And I get to do things that I like to do today. I get to go to work. I get to be a better person to society. I don't have to be a menace like I was before.
I have a quick question. Um, so the story as far as the lack of what we would call proper upbringing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're at today, what what fulfills you with that love? What fulfills you with what was lacking in growing up? What do you grasp onto now?
The things that I grasp onto today is the little things in life. Just like, I don't know, like being in the freedom of today and living in the now. Like, I don't have to worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, or I don't have to worry about how I'm going to get the next fix or anything. So what I grasp on today is the love and the compassion of my higher power, who I call God today, and the freedom of just being me. I have more love and compassion for myself and for other people today, which is something that I never really had. It's something I've always looked for when I was growing up or when in my younger years. And today, like, I have that. I have people that generally tell me every day that they love me for who I am.
That's awesome.
And like, it's not that I go out looking for people to tell me that. It's that people do that just out of kindness. I wake up almost every morning with a text message on my phone or somebody calling me just to tell me they love me and they're glad to have me around.